Chapter 2. The Scribe's Breath. The night air clung cold to their skin as Izzi and Kaelin dragged themselves from the water. The world beyond the temple was hushed, save for the distant clamor of guards scouring the inner docks. They had swum until their lungs burned, until the temple's lanterns were no more than trembling sparks across the waves. They stumbled over slick stones, seawater bleeding dark from their clothes. Izzi's chestnut hair hung in heavy ropes against her back, copper streaks glinting in the weak starlight. Her daggers were still wet, red running thin as tea down the hilts. Her violet-gray eyes were unfocused, pinned to the horizon as if Selene might still be there with her blade raised and that smile like a cut. Kaelin led them toward the outer walls, a jagged ring of old fortifications that once kept the city's nightmares at bay. The nearest watchpost had long since sagged into ruin. Its crenellations were cracked, its roof open to the sky. Beneath the leeward side, tucked from the wind, they found a stone recess overlooking the Black Sea. With a grunt, Kaelin slid the greatsword from his shoulder and set it down beside him. The massive blade thunked against the stones, catching the meager light along a nicked, well-kept edge. He wrung seawater from his cloak and tore it into strips, then coaxed a stingy fire to life from driftwood and stubborn tinder. His movements were slow but sure, each one something solid to hang the moment on. Izzi remained standing. Arms folded tight across her chest, she stared out at the breathing dark. When her voice came, it was flattened, as if all the color had been pressed from it. I couldn't stop her. Kaelin watched a coal collapse and glow hotter. You nearly carved her to ribbons. No. The word landed like spittle. She turned, face cut sharp by firelight, strands of wet hair stuck to her cheek. She got away again, after everything she's taken. After... The image of Renlin folding around the rapier, of his body shouldered coldly into the water, stole whatever came next. Kaelin said nothing for a while. He fed the fire, the crackle filling the gap where words weren't ready yet. At last he rumbled. The boy still breathes. You gave him that. Izzi flinched. For how long? Long enough to matter, Kaelin said. His eyes caught hers across the fire. And that's more than most of us ever have. Izzi dropped to a crouch beside the fire, knees tight, heat biting her face. Her reopened hand throbbed beneath its crude wrap. She could feel the slip of her dagger leaving her grasp, the way the blood had slicked the hilt. The memory of the dock returned in shards, steel, a wet gurgle, the board's hollow drum under falling bodies. She closed her eyes. I felt it, she said into her palms. That coldness. When she smiled at me like I was still hers, when the guards rushed us, I wanted to let it take me. I almost did. Kaelin's gaze didn't waver. I saw, he said, low, and it scared the hells out of me. She looked at him, quick and vulnerable. And you still trust me? He huffed a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. I trust you because you're asking. Animals don't ask what they are. A beat, then, softer, and because I've watched you climb back from worse. Some tightness eased under her ribs. For a long moment they just listened. The little fires pop, the lap of water far below, the murmur of a city pretending it had not bled. You always know what to say, she said, a corner of her mouth lifting despite the ache. Sometimes, he said, leaning back to the stone. Other times I'm just making noise so you don't brood yourself to death. A small sound, half laugh, half broken thing escaped her. The fire painted her face gold, then ember red. She looked into it, then stood with a sudden, clean resolve. I can't leave it like this. I have to know if he's alive. Kaelin tilted his head. And how do you plan to find him with half the temple roused? If he's alive, someone in those halls will know where they took him. She spoke quietly. Kaelin grunted. The greatsword's broad pommel caught the flicker as he lifted it a hand's breadth, then let it settle again. You'll go whether I tell you no or not. Yes. He sighed through his nose, a gravelly sound. Then come back whole, or I'll climb those walls, carry your stubborn carcass out and bury you where the no grass grows. Izzi's lips quirked, almost sweet. Go, he said, tossing another sliver of driftwood into the fire without looking at her. Before I think of smarter things to say. She pulled up her hood, checked the edges of her daggers by touch. For a heartbeat, she stood there in the wobbling light, and the night made her look like a figurine cast in brass, hard and fragile at once. Then she turned, and the dark accepted her. Kaelin watched the last ripple where she'd been. He settled with his back to the stone, angling the greatsword so its weight lay ready across his knees. Wind teased the fire, he fed it answered. Out beyond, the sea breathed in long, patient pulls. "Don't let death drag you under, Scribe," he muttered to the night. "She'll pull the temple down by its teeth if you're gone." The fire answered with a pop, sending a small galaxy of sparks skyward. Above, the stars burned indifferent and steady, while the little blaze at the wall did its humble work, warming a pair of wet boots, kissing steam from a great blade, and holding a vigil for a thief prowling the dark to bring a boy back to breath. The city was quiet, but not asleep. From the shadow of the outer wall, Izzi studied the temple rising against the night sky, its towers lit by wavering torches. The firelight carried far, gold trembling against pale stone, and beneath it the city seethed with movement. Patrols stalked the streets, their boots striking in grim rhythm. The hiss of steel, the bark of orders, the occasional flare of torchlight betrayed their restlessness. Izzi pulled her hood lower, steadying her breath. She could almost hear Celine's laughter caught on the sea breeze, mocking her, reminding her of the moment she'd slipped away. "This isn't about her," she told herself. "Not tonight. Tonight, it's him." Renlin's face burned in her memory, pale, shocked, eyes wide with confusion as the blade passed through him. She had seen too many men fall to wounds like that, too many bodies carried out cold. But Kaelin had dragged him from the water, and some stubborn part of her heart refused to accept it as his end. If the scribe still breathed, she would find him. Izzi's boots struck silently on the cobbles as she slipped from shadow to shadow, her body pressed close to the walls of houses and warehouses that clung near the temple's edge. Her movements were a hunter's, measured, sure, each pause long enough to listen. Somewhere above, a bell tolled, slow and heavy. Its echo rolled across the rooftops like the beating of a heart. Izzi vaulted the low wall bordering the temple grounds, landing soft in the grass. The courtyard stretched wide before her, framed by columns that reached into the night. Lanterns swung from hooks, their light swaying in circles across pale stone, catching in the carved reliefs of saints and warriors long forgotten. Voices drifted through the stillness, rough and low. 2 guards paced along the flagstones, spears clinking against their armor with every step. Another pair stood near the fountain at the courtyard's center, their torchlight throwing long shadows into the arches. Izzi pressed herself into the lee of a column, breath shallow, letting her eyes adjust to the patterns of their patrol. 10 of ours, cut down at the dock, one murmured, his voice heavy with unease. 10. No chance to cry out. The other spat into the grass. Whoever did it's still out there. We'll find them. Commander swears by dawn we'll have answers. Their boots scraped closer. Izzi flattened against the column, her heart a drum she forced into silence. The guards passed, their torchlight sliding just inches from where she stood. Another voice from the fountain. All 10. Dead like cattle. Whoever it was. Gods, they butched 'em. Izzi shut her eyes. She could see them again, the blood slicking the boards, the bodies collapsing under her daggers. Her own hands sticky and red, the way her vision had narrowed to nothing but the rhythm of killing. She clenched her jaw, pushed it down, and moved. Silent as a shadow, she slipped from column to column, her body in perfect counterpoint to the guards' movements. Every breath of wind, every creak of leather became her map. The temple's great doors loomed just ahead, iron-banded and half open. She waited, counted the guards' steps, then darted across the open flagstones, slipping into the dark maw of the temple's halls. The entry hall yawned wide before her, a cathedral of shadow and stone. High above, colored glass windows caught the moonlight, painting fractured blues and reds across the flagstones. Incense hung thick in the air, cloying, masking the underlying tang of oil and sweat. Izzi crouched low against the base of a pillar, letting her eyes sweep the chamber. There were more guards than she'd ever expected, far more than a temple should ever need. Pairs stalked the side aisles with lanterns swinging. 2 more crossed the nave, their armor catching the dim light. At the far doors leading deeper, 4 stood watch as if expecting an army to breach the sanctum. Too many, Izzi thought, teeth gritting. This isn't just defense, this is occupation. She stilled, breath slow, letting her ears take what her eyes could not. Bits of chatter drifted through the echoing space as men passed one another, voices kept low but carrying nonetheless. Still searching the docks. Nothing left but blood on the boards. No word from the healers yet. If the boy lives, it'll be a miracle. Master Celine's already gone. Ship left with the tide, back to her keep across the sea, I suppose. That last phrase hit Izzi like a blow to the ribs. She pressed tighter into the pillar's shadow, jaw working. Celine had vanished from under her blades only hours ago, but already she was leagues away, safe in whatever lair she crawled back to. Her fingers twitched against the hilt of her dagger. She could almost feel Celine's warmth in her grasp again, the moment she'd driven steel into her hip. She bit down on the thought, hard. The guards passed, their lantern light trailing, their words falling to silence. Izzi slipped along the base of the pillars, counting their numbers, their rhythms, their blind spots. Too many, but not enough to stop me. Ahead, the hall split into corridors, one climbing toward the upper sanctum, the other veering off toward the healer's wing where she prayed Renlin had been carried. A sudden creak of hinges drew Izzi back into the column's shadow. A side door opened, spilling a slice of lamplight into the hall. A healer emerged, her arms laden with bundles of herbs and glass vials that clinked together with each hurried step. Her white robes were stained with dark patches at the cuffs, the hem dragging across the stone. Izzi's eyes narrowed. Healers move where the blood calls them, like a shadow slipping from one pool of darkness to the next. She followed, her boots silent against the cold floor. The healer's sandals slapped in a desperate rhythm, her breath coming quick as she pushed through another door at the hall's end. Izzi slipped in just as it began to swing shut. The smell struck her first, iron and sweat, heavy in the air. Rows of cots lined the long chamber, but most were still, each draped with pale sheets pulled to the chin. The stench of death hung thick, unmoving. Only one man yet clung to life. He lay beneath the fevered hands of the healer, his chest bound in layer upon layer of blood-soaked cloth. His skin was waxen, his breath shallow and quick, lips trembling with each effort to draw air. The healer muttered under her breath as she pressed fresh poultices into the wound, herbs crushed dark between her fingers. "I won't lose another," the woman hissed, almost a prayer, almost a command. "Not another one tonight." Izzi's chest tightened as her gaze swept the chamber. 10 men, the 10 she had cut down, their faces slack now, their mouths still open in their final gasps. The sight pressed on her ribs like a weight. In battle they had been obstacles, here they were reminders. Her fingers curled around the hilt of her dagger, nails biting into her palm. She slipped back into shadow, breath steadying, and crept along the passage. Door after door lined the hall, some open with torchlight flickering, others locked and silent. Every hinge she leaned against whispered, every breath risked discovery. She stopped, pressed her ear against a heavy door. And there it was. Faint, so faint she almost thought it the groaning of timbers in the night. A voice, weak, broken, mumbling in shallow bursts. Izzi froze, every nerve in her body screamed recognition. The door creaked when she pushed it open, just enough to slip inside. The room was dim, lit by a single guttering candle that leaned in its brass holder. Shadows clung thick against the walls, and the air smelled of salt, blood, and crushed herbs. Renlin lay on a narrow cot, his frame too small for the wound that had been carved into him. His chest was swaddled in layers of fresh bandages, dark with seeping blood, each rise and fall of his ribs tugging at the stitches that crisscrossed the wound beneath. Izzi's breath caught as she pulled the wrappings up, just enough to see the ugly slash beneath. Flesh drawn together by thick healer's thread, still wet, still pulsing with fragile life. She lowered the cloth back into place, her hands trembling. A damp rag had been set across his brow, but even with it, heat poured from his skin. His lips parted, mumbling words too soft to make sense, his breath stuttering with the effort. Izzi sat at his side, her hand hovering over his without quite daring to take it. Relief swelled in her chest, sharp and aching, until she thought she might collapse from it. Against all reason, against all odds, he was alive. "Renlin," she whispered, the name soft on her tongue. For a moment she wanted nothing more than to stay, to keep vigil until his eyes opened, to hear him stammer through his thoughts the way he always did, to see that awkward half-smile that had somehow brightened even the darkest parts of the road. But Celine's face rose behind her eyes, silver eyes like knives, the whisper of her voice in Izzi's mind, the pull of that cold fury that lived in her chest. The horrors Celine had already wrought on her once, and the promise of more to come. Izzi swallowed, forcing the ache down. Renlin didn't belong in that world, her world. The boy was a scholar, a seeker of words and history. Not a blade, not a shield. He deserved the chance to heal, to stay behind these walls and live a life untouched by the ruin she and Kaelin carried in their wake. Renlin stirred, his head twitching weakly against the damp cloth. His lips moved again, the sound a broken murmur. Leora. Izzi blinked. The name meant nothing, but the way he spoke it, with need, with tethered hope, carved a line straight through her. She remembered the whispers of his visits to the library, the way he had spent hours buried in its halls. Whoever Leora was, she must have been tied to that place. Izzi leaned close, brushing her lips against his fevered temple before letting them linger at his cheek. "I'll find them for you," she whispered. "Rest now, Scribe. Let this world keep you safe." As she drew back, her eyes caught something in the corner, a glimmer of steel propped against the wall. Her rapier, polished by temple hands, leaned against a chair as if waiting to be reclaimed. She stood, crossed the room, and took it in hand. For a long moment she weighed it, the familiar balance, the scars on the hilt where her grip had worn grooves into the leather. Every mile she had walked with Kaelin, every fight, every stolen breath of freedom, this blade had been there. She turned, looking at Renlin lying still, stitches holding him together. Slowly, deliberately, she set the rapier down at the foot of his bed. It was his now, a reminder that what they had endured together was real, that he had not imagined his place among them, however brief. Izzi lingered one last time, her hand brushing his arm, before she slipped from the room like smoke. Izzi eased the door shut behind her, letting the latch settle with the softest click. She pressed her back to the wall, eyes closing for a moment as she let the breath shudder from her lungs. Renlin was alive. Against everything, he was still here. A sudden sound snapped her eyes open, the sharp squeak of hinges, the swish of robes. From down the corridor, the healer she had followed earlier slipped quickly out of the ward where the guards lay. Her arms were streaked with blood to the elbows, her pace brisk, almost desperate, as if the work inside pressed too close to bear. Izzi flattened herself into the shadows of a side arch, breath caught tight in her throat. The healer's sandals slapped the stone as she moved past. Then came another voice, deep and rasping with authority. "How are my men?" The Temple Lord Commander. Izzi didn't need to see him to know. His voice carried the weight of command, and the strain of a man who had already counted too many dead. The healer's reply was weary, her words breaking under the strain. "Only one. I could save only one." A heavy silence fell. Then the commander swore, the sound like steel dragged across stone. "Justice will be done. Whoever did this will pay in blood." Izzi closed her eyes, her jaw tightening. Images of the dock surged back, blades flashing, throats opening, bodies collapsing in the lamplight. She had told herself it was necessary, that Celine's escape left her no choice. But now the echo of those words, "only one," gnawed in her gut. If they knew it was me. The commander's voice dropped low, a growl meant for his men alone. She didn't wait to hear more. She slipped from the archway and moved on, her boots whispering over the stones. The streets were hollow when she left the temple behind. Lanterns guttered low, their flames shrunk to embers, and the cobbles gleamed with the sheen of night dew. Every footstep echoed more than she liked, bouncing off shuttered windows and crooked doorways. A stray cat darted across the road, tail lashing, vanishing into a gap between stone. Izzi pulled her hood tighter. The adrenaline was wearing thin, and weariness pressed at the edges of her bones. She thought of the small fire on the outer wall, Kaelin sitting cross-legged with his greatsword across his knees, waiting. She could almost hear his voice already, dry and rumbling in the back of her mind. "Day late, Iz. Thought you'd finally gotten yourself killed." Her lips tugged into the faintest smile, though her chest still ached. She would face his scolding soon enough. For now, the city belonged to her alone. When dawn broke, it came slow and gray, light spilling over the tiled roofs until the sky warmed to pale gold. By the time the library's heavy doors creaked open, Izzi was already waiting, leaning in the archway across the street with her arms folded, watching. The library was vast, its facade a lattice of stone arches and carved saints, the doors iron-banded and heavy. Inside, the air was thick with the perfume of parchment and old wood. Shafts of new sunlight pierced through tall windows, gilding dust motes in their path. Rows upon rows of shelves stretched into the dim, each stacked with books, scrolls, and maps that whispered the lives of 1,000 years. Izzi wandered between them, her steps light, her eyes scanning faces. Scholars shuffled past, clutching stacks of tomes. Apprentices carried ladders, their arms full of bundled manuscripts. A woman in green robes hunched over a lectern, lips moving as she traced lines of text with her finger. Izzi put on her brightest smile, the kind that cracked open doors better than any lockpick. She asked casually, with a tilt of her head and a disarming laugh, if anyone knew of a Leora. A patron? A scribe? A healer? She wasn't sure. Most shook their heads or shrugged, but Izzi kept at it, dropping the name here and there like a coin into an open palm. Eventually, an older man with ink-stained fingers squinted at her, tilting his head toward the far stacks. "Aye, you'll be looking for the girl who keeps to the eastern alcove. Brown hair, blue eyes, always buried in something thicker than her arms can carry." Izzi thanked him with a wink that made the old man chuckle despite himself. She followed the direction given, weaving deeper into the shelves where light grew thin and quiet. The air smelled of vellum and dust, and the hush of the place seemed to press even tighter the farther she went. There, a figure bent over a spread of books, the candlelight haloing her hair. Izzi slowed, one hand brushing the edge of a shelf, the other drifting near her dagger more out of habit than need. Her violet-gray eyes narrowed as she studied the girl, her lips parted to speak. Izzi slowed at the edge of the alcove, her steps quiet as falling dust. The girl bent over the books was younger than she expected, though not by much, perhaps a year or two Renlin's senior. Brown hair spilled across her shoulders, lit in warm strands by the candle at her elbow. She had the kind of stillness Izzi envied, a patience that let her eyes sink into the page as though the world beyond it didn't exist. Even from here, Izzi could see what Renlin must have. A softness, unassuming yet impossible to ignore, the faint curve of her lips as she mouthed the words she read, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear without looking up, wholly at home in this temple of words. There was beauty there, but more than that, gentleness, a light that cut against the blood and ruin Izzi carried on her skin. For a moment, she almost forgot why she'd come. Leora's head lifted suddenly, eyes catching Izzi's. They were clear, blue like an ocean, sharp with curiosity. She frowned, not unkindly, as she rose from her bench. "Can I help you with something?" Leora's blue eyes stayed on Izzi, curious but cautious. "Can I help you with something?" she asked again, her voice soft but steady. Izzi tilted her head, letting an easy smile curl across her lips. "Maybe, though you look like you're already deep in better company." She nodded at the stack of books beside Leora, tomes so tall they threatened to topple. "What's caught you so entranced?" Leora glanced down, smoothing the page with her hand. "Histories, mostly naval accounts, some old temple records. Not many bother with them." She gave a small shrug, almost embarrassed. "Naval accounts," Izzi mused, stepping closer, her fingers trailing idly along the spine of a book on the shelf. "You've got more patience than me. My tastes run toward things a little livelier." That earned her a small laugh, light and genuine. Izzi felt the sound settle in her chest. Though Izzi went on, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I do have a friend who eats that kind of thing up. Dareth Melkor, for example. He never shuts up about the man's work." At the name, Leora's face brightened with unmistakable recognition. "Dareth? I've been reading so much of him these past few days. I had someone to go through it with. He insisted on showing me the texts." Her words softened, as if she were talking about something precious. Izzi let her smile linger, but inside, the answer sealed itself like a lock clicking into place. She reached into her cloak, fingers brushing parchment. "That sounds just like him," she said lightly, pressing the folded paper into Leora's hand. "Keep this close. It's about your friend." Confusion flickered across Leora's face, but she unfolded the parchment anyway. Her eyes scanned quickly, the words striking harder with each line. Her lips parted in shock. "He's in the temple's ward?" She looked up, startled. Wait, who are you?" But the alcove was empty. The candle flickered, casting her shadow long against the wall. Leora clutched the parchment, heart pounding, the echo of violet-gray eyes and a fleeting smile still lingering where the stranger had stood. Leora clutched the parchment to her chest, her steps quick and uncertain as she left the library behind. Izzi followed at a distance, her hood drawn low, weaving through the thinning morning crowds. The temple loomed ahead, its spires pale in the dawn light. Leora slowed at its gates, nerves written plain in her face, before finally squaring her shoulders and stepping inside. Izzi slipped into a narrow lane opposite, climbing a stack of crates until she perched in a high window frame with a clear view of the ward's entry. Minutes passed. Then the doors opened. Leora stood there, speaking with the healers, parchment trembling faintly in her hand. They studied her with wary eyes, but after a hushed exchange, one nodded and led her through. Izzi shifted, leaning closer to watch through the warped glass. There, in the dim chamber where she had left him, Renlin lay pale and still, chest rising in shallow rhythm. Leora paused at the threshold as though afraid her presence might shatter him. Then, slowly, she crossed the room and sank to her knees at his side. Her hand found his, small fingers curling around his bandaged knuckles. She bent her head, shoulders trembling, and wept silently while he slept, her tears falling onto the cloth across his chest. Izzi's throat tightened. "Curious what kind of trouble you've stumbled into," she thought, eyes tracing the fragile picture below. The scribe and the girl who read too much, bound together in something gentler than her world ever allowed. The sight eased something deep in her chest. Renlin wasn't alone. Slipping back into the shadows, Izzi climbed down from her perch and melted into the waking streets. By the time she reached the outer walls, the sun had fully risen, setting the horizon aflame with pale gold. Kaelin would be waiting, greatsword across his knees, that scowl etched into his face. He would give her the scolding she deserved, and she would meet it with a grin. For now, though, she carried a rare weight of relief. Renlin was alive.
Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. More chapters are on the way.